Okay, alright, we're back again. This would be the fourth recording of this, so this would be part 4. We're gonna start where we left off last time. Alright. Okay, let's get this started. Alright, well, he almost got done running away from the police officers, so it ended up being a total misunderstanding from the last part that we were on. So, the lady from the restaurant basically was after him and put a tracking device on him. That's basically what happened. I mean, who the hell has a tracking device and just puts it on somebody? So, I'm interested to see what more comes about her and who this mysterious girl in the black is, who we really don't know very much about yet. Alright. This put me at a bit of a loss. Should I get angry, or should I respond like an adult? Only, this wasn't the time or place to dwindle. As I was about to say that I didn't mind even sleeping in the garden, she spoke first. I can't stand up. What? I kind of looked up at the woman who replied to her and continued. I can't put any strength into my hips. It's because he tackled me. Hagana looked at me as she said this. The woman looked at me. The other woman wasn't there, so she didn't know what the hell happened. So she's probably looking at her with a total mystery of what on earth did you tackle her for? Probably thought going in her mind. Oh, yep, right there. You tackled her? Really? I vaguely recall something like this happening in kindergarten or elementary school. Teacher, so-and-so, tackled someone or another. But I was not one to use violence without a reason. If the girl in the black looked over in response to a sound and saw someone searching through her own bag, wouldn't she have done the same thing? Right as I went to say this, I'm faced with the fact that I tackled a delicate girl and began to realize that I had done something that was hard to make an excuse for. You can't really make an excuse about when you actually did what's being said there. Just admit it, man. You tackled her, but you did not know it was a girl and you did not know who it was, so it's not your fault. You didn't know who she was, why she was in your bag, or any of that stuff. No reason to dwindle on that and think about it too much. Women are such fair creatures. I cursed the black-clad and white-skinned Hagana as a shrewd tactician. I guess so. Wait, no, but, well, I can imagine the situation. In that case, in a fight, both parties are to blame. The woman said this, then pointed at Hagana. Hagana looked at the tip of her finger as if it were covered in some kind of sweet syrup. If you can't walk, then have him carry you on his back. Oh, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna carry her on his back? The woman pointed her finger toward me. Still attracted by the finger, Hagana's gaze shifted to me. Wait, how is that punishment for the both of us? That doesn't make sense. While I protested, the woman raised her eyebrows, ever so slightly as if to insist that I listen to her. This was blatant favoritism, I thought. After all, the person that she's saying has to be carried must also, I began to think, then realized. In a fight, both parties were to blame. Okay, hurry up if you understand. This wasn't just any ordinary woman. Yeah, I would have to agree with that. She doesn't seem like the most ordinary woman. I mean, she has a tracking device, puts it on you, other things like that. I don't think an ordinary person just put tracking devices on people they don't know. Hagana also made a face as though she had come to some sort of realization, then nodded. I sighed. put my bag on my front side and walked up towards Hagana. She was sitting down, so her face was in a somewhat erotic position. Hagana had many particular expressive faces to begin with and stared up at me motionlessly. Erotic position? There's not a picture on the screen at the moment, but I guess I can use my imagination of what kind of position she might be into that would be erotic. Well, I guess it was her face that he's talking about. I guess more of an innocent look, not knowing what's going on, maybe? Trying to imagine it in my head. They're not giving me any image to go off of. Sadistic desires began to well up in me. Oh man. Earlier he was thinking in the last recording, he was thinking of doing some outrageous things to him. Basically stripping her naked and then taking pictures of her and putting it on the internet. He actually said that. This dude, our main character here, is, I don't think, the nicest person. He has some odd thoughts that go through his head that, you know, I wouldn't say is the most nicest people would be thinking. Thinking that I'd feel a lot better if I slapped the side of her face as hard as I could. However, I felt as though if I dwelt on these thoughts for too long, I might actually slap her. So I quickly crouched down and turned my back to her. Why do you want to slap her? Just because she's giving you an odd look or something? She went in your bag? Why do you still have some sort of feelings about, like, anger in you for? It was a misunderstanding, that's all it was. No reason to get all butthurt about it. I wasn't sure how long it'd take, but living under the same roof with her seemed like it'd be a pain. At least until the friction between us settled down, I should avoid any potential points of conflict. Come on, Hagane, turn your arms. That's right. I tried to give Hagane, who seemed to be telling the truth about not being able to stand, a hand in climbing on my back. Hagane's thin arms wrapped around my neck, then stiffened awkwardly. Actually, it seemed like this girl had never climbed on someone's back. Hagana, you're not going to be dangling from his neck. You're getting on his back. I can only imagine which position she's in at the moment. The woman explained, and after a bit of silence, Hagana shifted her body onto my back. Finally, two small but soft objects touched my back. Her boobs touched your backs. That's what it was. Soft objects. I guess they might be okay size. I mean, they must be big enough for him to, you know, feel. I don't know from the image they had before. I don't know how much you could judge. They haven't really showed too much about her, what she looks like yet. As I was responsible for carrying her, I wrapped my arms around the bottom of Hagana's thighs. I was filled with a strange thought. So this is what legs and stockings felt like. This guy's got some perverted thoughts going in his mind, I see. Well, I guess he did earlier, wanting to take pictures of her naked and post them online. Shit. It's not bad. Okay, stand. Another part of me nearly rose as well. But with a quick start, I put my strength into my two legs. Okay. You're getting a boner, is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? You're about to get a boner, nearly? I guess he does have some perverted thoughts flowing through his mind, even though he's angry at her. Those sexual urges. I hadn't skipped my resistance training, so I could easily carry up to around 5 times my weight. One slender girl was practically nothing to me. Oh, you're stronger than I thought. The praise didn't feel too bad. Alright, then let's go. The woman began to walk. I tried to follow behind her, but Hagane stopped me. Wait! The woman turned back, and we both looked at Hagane's face. Hers was right next to mine. Suddenly, I smelled something sweet and fruit-like for a moment. I wonder if there's going to be, as this progresses, there's going to be some sort of relationship building between him and this girl. I guess we'll find out. What is it? As the woman replied, Hagana raised her head a little while still on my back and replied quickly. He really stinks. She smells nice. Apparently he stinks. The woman looked blankly at Hagana, then at me. A strange, tearful smile began to appear on her face. In a fight, both parties are to blame. I'm going to make her bow down to me one day. Oh. I don't think that helped the situation there, the relationship, by her just saying he stinks. I guess maybe he really does stink. At that moment, I added another item to my list of ambitions. It seemed as though the place I tumbled into after running like mad wasn't a sewer. It was more precisely a reservoir. As Newton City was designed to gather everything, including people, water, and wealth. If there happened to be a problem with the city's water circulation facilities, there was a fear that the low-lying Newton City could flood. For that reason, there were apparently 2 additional layers of facilities for long-term water storage, so that water went from the outer sections to Green City, then from Green City to Newton City. While I didn't know the first thing about this, I did know that I was in a place with an incredibly fantastic atmosphere, and that was why other towns generally forbid entry into their reservoirs. It's because couples that get together tend to be drawn towards places like that. I nodded in agreement with this observation. Also, this area seemed to be quite a low-income neighborhood, even by the standards of the 6th outer section, and was full of homes on the verge of collapsing, even here on the gravity-weak moon. Even so, the many lights in the town made it easy to recognize that lots of people lived there. For a town in the outer sections, this one was relatively old. Apparently, it used to be more lively in the past. As it was also night, there was also nothing there related to liveliness. Actually, it looked like a scene out of some children's tale from long, long ago. This place wasn't a reality, but rather ruins from the real world overlapping with the glory of days past. That's how the place looked to me. But every once in a while, someone would go out to the eaves of their house, under the imitation stars projected on the dome, and amuse themselves by drinking alcohol or by playing a game of chess or Go. It may have been a poor area, but it seemed incredibly safe. They say that it was an old town, which must have meant that its residents had stopped developing the area. Newton City had developed at a rate that threatened to surpass even the most advanced nations on Earth, so some of the people that have been attracted to it work so hard that you could refresh the list of humanity's richest people and see changes every day. To put it another way, the people who decided not to compete became comparatively poor by the day. Getting poorer under capitalism meant that you're being forced that much further back in the big race. Not only that, I didn't want to become one of the masses. But if I failed, and I end up like those people... Hagana had finally stopped calling me smelly. I rearranged her position on my back, then asked myself a question sternly. Are we still not there yet? No matter how light there may be, people aren't the easiest thing to carry on one's back, especially when it's a girl you're carrying. You have to watch where you put your hands. That's right, you don't want any more problems with her. You better watch where you put your hands. I mean, get it up there on her ass, you might totally ruin your relationship. Whatever relationship it already seems to be in a pretty big little misunderstanding and a mess there. But, yes. You want to watch where you're putting your hands. Unless you know her good enough. And you don't know this girl. Hearing my question, Lisa looked over her shoulder and nodded lightly. As I sighed, thinking that we still had more to go, Lisa's feet suddenly stopped. We're here. ... Hearing those words, I stopped my feet and raised my head. I wonder what kind of run-down hut we had arrived at, but, to my surprise, I was facing an impressive gate. Actually, wasn't this a bit too impressive of a gate? 2 meters? 3 meters? Wait, more importantly, wasn't this? As I stood so dumbfounded that I forgot that Hagana was on my back, Lisa put a hand on the gate and slowly pushed it open. It didn't even seem to be locked. But, considering what this place was, I could understand. Standing in front of me was a building that I had only ever heard of before. Sheltering people is my hobby. Do you see why now? She opened the double doors and walked in. The next thing I knew, a bearded dude stuck on a cross was right in front of me. A church? Yep, a church. Alright, I guess that also explains she's religious and everything, so... I guess Christianity, well, it might be Christian. It doesn't mean it will be. It would be. It could be some form of evolution based on that, because this is sci-fi after all. Or some other thing, but a church nonetheless. A church does not automatically equal Christianity. I mean, churches have been in plenty of video games, and there has been no mention of Christianity. It's usually been where you, like, heal yourself and shit like that. But you know the origins probably originate via that, you know. They're based around that type of theme. So, I guess that does explain, you know, why she's so friendly, but why does she have a tracking device is another thing. She is not your ordinary lady who works at a restaurant. Must be like a part-time job to her or something. Welcome to the 6th Avenue Church. Lisa said this to me while I was still in shock. Yeah, you're a Christist? Christus? I don't know what... Alright. Not Christist. Christian. Alright, so, yes. That is what she is. I guess it still exists in this universe of this game. I thought that was something they only did on Earth. Okay, so they must not be very religious up on the moon. This was supposed to be a place on the forefront of science and human advancement. Well, just because it's on the forefront doesn't mean there's going to be... I mean, these people all did come from Earth. Well, not all of them. Some of them were born on the moon, I guess. So, you know, some of them would probably stick to keep their religious ideals, for the most part. Even if it's the forefront of science and advancement. This was supposed to be the place at the forefront of science and human advancement. Alright, I already read that. Why was there a church here? Or could it be that for people from Earth, this place, far away in the sky, was supposed to be heaven? As I looked at Lisa as if she were some exotic animal, she gave a slightly embarrassing grin and shook her head. Well, I suppose you would say that, but don't worry. I'm not going to try to convert you or anything. Huh? I guess she was supposed to be saying that. I didn't see any quotations or her name there. I guess that's supposed to be her talking. This game does seem to have a few little issues, technical issues. It makes me wonder if I've seen some of those blank screens that are just black, and it does make me wonder if some of those screens are supposed to be black, or there's supposed to be a picture there. After a long silence, all I could manage was a puff of laughter through my nose. According to my faith, all I'm to do is to let lost sheep rest for a short time. It's the same thing for that girl on your back. I had already forgotten I was carrying Hagana. Hey, we're here, so I'm going to let you down. Hurry up and let me down. I felt a flash of anger, but since I was holding onto both of her legs, I figured in the end it was a very natural thing to say. Though I was overwhelmed by the temptation to just let her go, I bent my knee slowly and let her down, 1 foot at a time. She looks a little pissed in that picture right there. You can't stand. ... Giving a little silent treatment there, are you? Still a little pissed to look like? Hagana was silent, but she seemed to be amazed that she was standing. What a strange woman. So, what were you saying? Oh, so she's a runaway too? So, a runaway, oh. Right. Same idea with Surrot. This place is a crossroads, and so, according to the teachings, I have a bucket for washing feet and a cup of cold water ready to give. Feet? Water? I made a face as if to say, what is this woman even talking about? Lisa saw it, and instead of getting angry, she breathed a disappointed sigh. Do you happen to be born and bred on the moon? Kind of bred. I don't know if that was the right translation to use to actually translate. Maybe that's the actual translation from Japanese, but I think a better word probably could have been used than bred. Born and raised? That's what I would have probably turned it into. I think it would have made a little bit more sense than bred. I mean, it sounds like an animal when you say breed. You know, when you say bred or anything like that. Yes, but so what? After I asked this back at her, Lisa shook her head, disappointed. She was making fun of me. Was that what it was? As I glared at her, Lisa looked toward the statue of the dude stuck on a cross, placed her hands together, and bowed her head. O Lord, you have brought on to me a great trial. Then, as she said this, she made a strange gesture with her right hand in front of her body. As I wondered what she was doing, Lisa faced me and began to speak. For now, why don't you take a bath? I'm not trying to be Hagana, but you are a little dirty. Being told this to my face was actually a bit embarrassing. Well, I'm sorry. As I said this, trying to hide my embarrassment, Hagane, who has been watching the situation quietly, picked up where Lisa left off. In fact, you smell terrible! She actually speaks. Just to say, you're a smelly ass. You stink, man. You're stinky. After that, I began to be especially conscious about my own body. That day I realized that I was at a far more emotional and innocent age than I had thought. Well, I think it would be bad, you know, if you had some sort of attraction, which you must have had, you found her slightly attractive if you were going to be getting a boner. An attractive girl calling you smelly, yes, I think you would feel a little self-conscious and a little embarrassing, you know, if you didn't notice it yourself. You'd be like, okay. It was the first proper bath I've had since running away from home, and I was on the verge of tears. Both my parents were immigrants from Japan, so soaking in the tub was pretty much a daily tradition. It would be the only luxury my parents enjoyed, if I had to think of any. You could find water circulating all over the lunar surface, but you definitely couldn't say water was inexpensive because of that. I heard that the reason they made water flow visibly everywhere was because water had a calming effect on the human soul. Even if that weren't true, I heard that all but a few places on Earth were short of water, and that half of international disputes stemmed from water resource issues. Well, in some areas, water is an issue, yes. Where I live, no. I live next to a body of water, so water is not an issue here. Perhaps the visible presence of water was to put some of the immigrants' anxieties to rest, since they believed that fights over water resources were an everyday occurrence due to their coming from various regions on Earth. However, what I was currently soaking in was apparently water siphoned off before final processing, and thus it was quite cheap. So, not super clean water, I'm assuming. At the bottom of the tub, I could see pieces of aquatic plants used for water purification like I'd see in waterways. It wasn't just water that was limited on the moon. Unlike Earth, the moon didn't have vast quantities of various resources. Most of them were created from chemical processing of native lunar materials, or failing that, import via the orbital elevator. That's why people said that the government organizations in charge of managing the lunar surface had terrible, precise control over the flow of various materials throughout the city. The most important of those was water, and thus the amount of oxygen, hydrogen. Any amount of oxygen can be attained by using the plentiful amount of solar radiation to break down silicon dioxide, sand. In other words, hydrogen, however, could only be obtained via hydrocarbons that only existed at the poles. Hydrogen is too light for the moon's gravity to retain it, and thus naturally occurring hydrogen was quite rare. Carbon could be obtained by using the limitless electrical power here to break down solid carbon dioxide shipped in from the orbital elevator. Oxygen could be attained from this process, thus killing two birds with one stone. Nitrogen and the various minerals needed for the growth of plants and animals could be attained through chemical pellet transported in through the orbital elevator. This basic knowledge was supposedly taught to all kids in elementary school during the science class. Unfortunately, I hadn't really applied myself in school, and thus had to learn it much later. What got me to learn about this was when I first started seriously trading stocks and wanted to figure out who had the best slice of the pie when it came to the various systems on the moon. I was naively thought that invested in that would guarantee smooth sailing, and that would be that. I had learned that a lot while operating under the notion, and thus it wasn't all the rose-tinted. I accidentally clipped. My finger was a little on the button there for clicking. I remember saying in all that the systems revolving around rights tied to the important resources in lunar cities. The public parts were, of course, controlled by the government, but the most powerful on the civilian side had to be Emerald Industries, which held the civilian rights to the orbital elevator. By the way, if you were wondering about why the company was named after emeralds, it was because a long time ago people said that the moon's core was made of emerald. I've never heard of that. Maybe I should look that up if some people actually think the core of the moon was made of emerald. Unless this is make-believe and it was just made for this game, this visual novel here. That they came up with the idea that, hey, let's put this in there, that the story, that the center of the moon's core was made of emerald. I've never heard of that, but maybe that's true. Maybe. I mean, there might be some things that they take reality for here. It was originally a maintenance company, but since this was such a complicated piece of machinery, there weren't many qualified guys who could work on it. This was a textbook example of what would happen if they were also quite crafty. The majority of the infrastructure on the moon was under the umbrella of Emerald Industries and related subsidiary companies. During the time it took for me to come out of the bathroom, dry myself off, put on the obviously old t-shirt and pants, I must have interacted with products from 100 to 200 of Emerald Industries' various subsidiaries. That's quite a few product items. I mean, whew, they must be a pretty big corporation. This was a totally artificial city. So artificial, it would put Las Vegas and Dubai to shame, even though those were lauded as cities with fountains in the desert. I hadn't seen either city with my own eyes, but I had seen footage of them. People on Earth sure were idiots, I thought candidly to myself. Excuse me. All freshed up? When I came out of the changing room, Lisa was lying back on the sofa. There was a cup of water she had poured for me on the table. You know what? This is one of the things with visual novels, is sometimes they make a description in the text that does not represent anything that comes out of the picture. Well, pardon me. Sorry about that. See, she is not sitting at no sofa. She's in a chair reading a book. The changing room connected straight into the living room. In it was an old and worn sofa set that she must have picked up from a dump somewhere, along with a coffee table, a carpet whose corners must have mended countless times. There was no TV, but there was a computer. Also on the coffee table was a multifunctional terminal that Lisa had been using just now. What had surprised me was the thick book next to it. It was a rare event to see real books on the moon, where space and resources were limited. I had thought until relatively recently that books were simply an application interface format. I didn't realize that things that resembled what was drawn on the screen actually existed. Apparently this guy has never actually seen an actual physical book. I guess they must not be that common, an actual physical book. People who came from Earth made fun of people who grew up on the moon for things like that. Okay. Well, I think I would too. You know, and I wouldn't actually probably make fun of it, but I would think it'd be funny. Nonetheless, I wouldn't be make fun of someone, but it'd be like, you know, you haven't seen a book? It'd be like one of those type of things. Like, you know, if you live somewhere that's someone that's like a knowledge that you would expect everyone to know, and then you find someone who doesn't, it'd be like, what? It's like, where the hell you been? However, from my point of view, people from Earth were the ones who had something messed up in their heads, since they still stuffed these ridiculous bulky books in places like libraries. Personally, I like to read books. I like a physical book, a physical one, compared to reading on a screen. There's something about reading an actual book in your hand compared to reading it on the screen on like your cell phone or a tablet or the computer screen or whatever. It just doesn't have the same feeling. Is it rare to see a real book? I came to when Lisa asked me a question. Once more she had the multifunctional terminal in her hand, most likely reading a book again. Well, even if I have snapped back saying that I don't know what I don't know, her treating me like some naive idiot would piss me off. And thus I mumbled my reply with putting on a poker face, but Lisa didn't make fun of me. Well, they certainly take up space. They also get dirty easily, so you'd have to take good care of them. Furthermore, you couldn't really search them, so the digital version is 100 times better. Now, I will agree with that. Digital versions of stuff, you know, if they set up with a program or anything, or a specific way, and it wasn't just some file with text, but it actually had a ability to, like, search through the file if you want to search through it, or, like, chapter select, and you just, like, tap it, and boom, you're right to that chapter. Or you wanted to search for a certain name, you know, yeah, I would agree, totally much better. You know, it'd be nice. It'd be like, boom, boom. They have their uses, for uses, but, you know, if you just wanted to sit down and relax, I think a physical book would be more. But if you were searching for something, for information, you know, if it's a story-based book, I prefer physical, personally. But if it's if it's like information-based, digital's perfectly fine for me, because it's a lot easier, and you can store so much more of it in the ability. As you said, you can, like, search through them, you know, things like that. I instantly realized she was doing this out of consideration for me. It was as if she were some kindergarten teacher who had a good idea of what would cause immigrants from Earth and Moon bred kids to get into and fight. Sometimes these dialogues, when it cuts it off and gets to the other, sounds kind of weird when it's like two letters on the next page. And that is... I pointed at the thick but worn book on the table. There were some gold-colored alphabet-looking characters in the back cover, but I couldn't quite parse them. I guess it says Bible. L. This to me was the most important book in the world, and thus I brought it to me from earth. I think that's what it probably says, Bible. Even though I parted with Julie, who had been with me since the day I was born. Oh, she's my pet dog, by the way. Even if I parted with Julie, I could not bear to leave that book back on earth. Lisa laid the mobile terminal aside and carefully stroked the front cover of the tattered book. Upon seeing that, I flashed back to when I was a naive kid, being patted on the head by my parents' hands, roughened from work's outdoors. When did you come here from Earth? We got chased out of our place when I was 11. With that, my parents made the bold move to apply for lunar immigration. We didn't really have money, and thus we had to apply through the commoners category, which had ridiculous odds. Well, my parents' professions were kind of special, and since the NOAA system was still in effect, we managed to get placed into a preferential category. NOAA system? Ah, it was how people referred to the system for the preservation of multiculturalism. Well, I guess you wouldn't know about it unless you were involved with it. Well, there was this story about Noah's Ark. Well, there was some legend or oral tradition or teaching or whatever that talked about how when the world had turned to evil and was destroyed by a huge flood, good people and pairs of animals rode out the flood in a boat and went on to create a virtuous world after the water receded, something like that. My parents were both theological scholars. I guess they need people of that odd profession as well. This was the first time I had heard the term theological scholar. Lisa picked up the nearby terminal and showed me the dictionary entry. They were apparently people who study religious teachings. I was truly surprised that people who gave up their lives to such useless things were here on the moon. Now, I kind of agree that, religious-based thing is not the most important thing in the world, personally. Mainly because I'm not religious myself. I consider myself an atheist. So, I don't really care what other people think. If they want to do their religion, as long as you don't try to affect me or ruin other people's lives around you, I could really care less. As long as you're not trying to force your ideals on me, I'm all good. Just don't force anything on me, and I'm not going to force anything on you. And thus, this book was like my soul. To someone like me who had been raised in such a household, there were many authors, depending on which chapter it was, but it was mostly written around 2,000 years ago. It's actually the best-selling book on Earth, I guess that's pretty much true, in 2,000 years. So the time frame for this is, I guess, futuristic, alternate dimension. Well, I guess not futuristic, 2,000 years ago. Well, no, I guess that would still be futuristic. I don't remember what year I know that it was written after his death. For the New Testament and all that other stuff. I don't remember all that much. I'm not huge into that, so. Oh, is it that interesting? Lisa laughed out loud when I started to show a bit of an interest in the book while looking at it. Ha, well, no, sorry. Well, if you asked me whether it was interesting or not, I'd say it was interesting in its own way. But it isn't really that kind of a book. This is called the Bible. Remember the figures you saw in the church? This was the book written by the disciples of that guy pinned up there. It's a book of religious teachings, so to speak. They estimate that over 1 billion copies have been sold. 1 billion copies? It's because it could be found everywhere on Earth. It was translated into the words spoken by people all over the Earth. So, in other words, everyone on Earth reads it? I think you might be a little exaggerating on that. Everyone. I mean, I think that would be a great ideal for a universal, a whole group of the whole planet being under one umbrella of beliefs. Then you wouldn't have that conflict. But there would still probably be internal conflict if you look at it. Of slightly different beliefs within those, religions, because there are. At least they're not as violent as Islam likes to be. Like, you hear about those things on the news all the time, or reading about them. They seem to love to kill each other. If only that were the case. A question mark appeared on my face when I heard Lisa's reply. The Earth's population is roughly 6.5 billion. Even in an age where 700,000 of us could come to the moon, roughly a third of the people on Earth couldn't read, and 2/3 had no surroundings where they could sit down and read a book. Sit down and read a book. Okay, a little pause right there. The remaining fortitude on third had tons of other forms of entertainment. There were few people reading the Bible nowadays, even among Christians. Even at the church I attended, there were few people who knew there were 4 books that comprised the Gospels, and even less people knew the names of the 4 authors. You probably don't understand how sad this fact is. Sorry, totally don't have a clue here. Well, that's alright. I've already got a heavy load due to having to carefully watch over this old church. Still, knowledge passes on when people cross paths. Trivia used to refer to wisdom, and the word's original meaning was that of a 3-way intersection where people would cross paths. I had wondered what would be the point of having all these lost people meeting in such an intersection. It was perhaps a sign that I realized I should be a shepherd, watching over sheep. A shepherd? I've seen images of sheep being herded in sirens and electrical fences before while researching potential investment candidates. But how was this related to managers of those factories? Seeing me totally drawn a blank, Lisa laughed weakly and said, "Sorry, it's just a metaphor. I actually haven't seen a real shepherd either. I guess it was just a matter of not knowing stuff because I was born on the moon." I was at least a bit relieved by that. Well, I guess that makes sense. I mean, there's going to be plenty of stuff if you're not born in a certain environment that you're not going to know what happens. I mean, your life is the moon. That's all you really know. This other place, the Earth, is just something you just read about. It's just somewhere you haven't been, you haven't traveled to, you haven't learned about, really. Seems like your education isn't really taught too much about it. It doesn't seem to be. It makes sense. I mean, hey, you look at anything in any country, like you live in the United States, do you really know all about the history of France? Do you know all the history of Canada? Most people probably don't. If the same goes for someone in Canada, they probably don't know the whole entire history of the United States, the whole entire history of Mexico, or the whole entire history of Japan. You kind of learn about where you live. I'm pretty much the type of person. People would certainly wonder why I came to the moon to do such a thing. Well, I do think that. Lisa chuckled at my frank statement. Well, now let's talk about you, okay? Since you went to the trouble of saving me from the police, bringing me here since it looked like I had no place to go, and even letting me take a bath, my good character dictated that I answer her. I come from a settlement village on the outskirts of the Eastern Outer District. Oh, that great place with all the greenery, right? Outsiders all say that. Isn't it just because we're all from the Stone Age? Haha, well, people who would come to the moon were all city dwellers back when they were on Earth. They missed their greenery. I was beginning to feel that I was being blanketed and confused by a high level of logic. Are the cities on Earth full of greenery, then? Well, I guess the way I worded it was kind of bad. Even on Earth, there wasn't that much greenery in the cities. For some reason, people were attracted to the natural boundaries. My finger. Again. A little too quick on putting my finger on that button. But yeah. Cities, nah, not tons of greenery in cities. Unless you live on the outskirts of cities, you're really not going to see tons of greenery. Perhaps it's something ingrained in us. Aren't you the same? I was about to refute her point, but decided against it. In either case, I ran away from home over there. Okay, your name. Is it okay to ask? She doesn't even know his name. I actually thought she knew his name. Apparently she doesn't know his name. At least they asked me without showing any signs of trying to forcing me. Like I'd be able to get away with not answering that if I said no. That's fine. If you don't mind, if you don't want to. ... A little silence there? But it'd be kind of inconvenient to call for you, so I'd like some sort of name. The girl you carried on your back, she's called Hagana. It's not her real name. Huh? Well, it's not like she doesn't want to open up to me, but she's like a wild animal in that she's very cautious about things. I'm assuming some things have probably happened to her. It's probably why she's a little cautious. She also ran away, so she probably has some trust issues of, who to trust and things like that. Hagana was originally a word from the language of the Wanderers. Well, actually, does anything to come to mind when I use the terms Wanderers? No idea. I guess that's to be expected, but I guess the moonbred being free from Earth had this kind of meaning. ... question mark. Sorry. Talking to myself again. It's my first time talking to a kid who was born and bred on the moon. People born and bred on the moon. There's still probably not even 10,000 or so. People working in the Newton city said that it was due to the fact that many people weren't able to have children. Some sort of sterility or something with these people? Most of the people who came from Earth were 10 years old at the youngest when they rode the orbital elevator. There was a huge difference in gravity between the moon and Earth, and thus there was issues with their bodies. Of course, to them, Earth was their birthplace, and the common sense they possessed came from there as well. Well, this really is like trivia, the whole paths crossing and exchanging wisdom thing. Lisa smiled with satisfaction while uttering those words. If that girl clad in black, Hagana, could be considered strange, then Lisa must also be strange for helping and harboring me. Anyhow, even in this day and age, and living on the moon, she's all into religion and cherishing her real books. To put it bluntly, I wondered if she was a social outcast. However, I had a favorable impression of Lisa, even though she didn't seem to take part in the competitions that raged on in this competitive city. It was true she wasn't pushed ahead, but it didn't feel like she was falling back either. Even in this low-gravity environment, Lisa appeared to have her feet planted firmly on the ground. She looked to me as if she enjoyed just living her life. I was a bit moved seeing that people like her actually existed. I had thought that there were 3 types of people on the moon. The rough and crude from my village who refined only in speech. The distant people from the outer sections who couldn't be helped. The decadent. I don't know why I said decent. Decadent people. And the residents of Newton City, who took advantage of the low gravity to jump up to lofty heights. Those were my thoughts as I looked at Lisa, who was smiling happily to herself. Feels like she could at least be trusted. Yoshiharu. Huh? Kawaura Yoshiharu. Oh, your name. It's my real name, so if you report me, they'd quickly notify my parents. After my blunt answer, Lisa looked at me for a moment. Then a smile spread over her face. I see. I got it. Well then, how about just Hall? ... Hall? He's gonna be called Hall now? Even if I called you by just your first name, wouldn't it really narrow down who you are? it would be obvious you were the kind of Japanese immigrant. If it were just Hall, then that wouldn't be an issue. Of course, there wasn't really any reward for turning someone in, but the fact that someone didn't do it from the get-go was also a bit creepy. This was a good thing for me, but suspicion had become a daily thing within my 3 months of wandering around. Lisa noticed the look of suspicion on my face and said, "Hee well, if this were Earth, I could just say, 'The Lord's will be done,' and smile and everyone would accept it." Totally have no clue what you're talking about. He is totally blank because he doesn't know anything about religion, or any sayings. In fact, I have no idea what she was actually saying either. I'm drawing a blank. Okay. I wouldn't really say anything either, if that's what she decided to say or whatever. Well, that's true. This is the moon after all, although sometimes I start getting the urge to put one of those on. That was what she said, and I wondered what she meant. Though from her expression, she probably just dodged the question if I asked her. However, it pains me that it's Hagana who'd fit better in them. Looks like my hair color's too light. Lisa talked to herself while brushing her hair with her fingers. It wasn't on Hagana's level, but I thought she had beautiful straight hair. Back in the village, everyone placed blonde women on a pedestal, but I kind of like girls with deeper colored hair. Well, this picture shows her hair as pink. She has pink hair. I don't know if I'd really call that deeper color. It's still pretty light. I guess it would be darker than blonde. But, you know, dirty blonde is still would be darker, I think, than probably her pink colored hair would be. To put it bluntly, like someone who's in front of me right now. Speaking of which, I wonder what the girl's doing now. It's almost time to sleep, but perhaps she wasn't planning on taking a bath. And right after she said that. Alright, how about we stop it right there and see what happens next? Who knows what might happen next? We'll have to see till later. I think it's time to shut this down and move along. I do want to thank you for watching. If you're interested, we'll have another one coming up. I will be going all the way through this. So even if you're not interested in continuing watching, I will continue. Again, thanks for watching. You all have a great day. I'll see you again.